In this presentation today, we will be exploring a possible answer to the question, what is the role of human geography in a changing world? Today, our focus will be on a specific area of study within the discipline, the study of representations. We will argue that one role of human geography is to interpret and understand how representations impact upon how we perceive things, and how a better understanding of this could aid transitions to more effective action across different societal issues. We will explore this through a series of examples. Firstly, we'll present research conducted by Dr. Saffron O'Neill and Anthony Lizowitz on climate change representations, looking at human geography's role in understanding and interpreting human perceptions. Secondly, we will explore how such research has aided the charity Climate Visuals to make effective climate change imagery more accessible, using this to explore human geography's role in aiding effective action against societal issues. Finally, we'll move away from climate change, exploring imagery and other societal issues, such as the portrayal of refugees, examining further the role of human geography in contemporary society.
Our interview with Dr. Saffron O'Neill started our journey in exploring the question, what is the role of human geography in a changing world? Saffron recommended that we read an article published alongside Maxwell Boykoff, Simon Lumiere and Sophie Day on the use of imagery for climate change engagement. The article explored the role of imagery in the media and its effect on climate change. Based upon this, we conducted our interview. Saffron highlighted that the reason for developing her papers was that she found a gap in research. Nobody had explored this avenue yet, even though evidence from psychologists had shown that images were actually really important in how people thought about and constructed meaning out of climate change. Saffron went on to explain that images of prominent leaders such as Obama did not promote feelings of salience or efficacy. There is such a huge difference in prominent leaders' lives and the average person's life. Therefore, many have become desensitized to these images. It is not something that is going to impact an individual's everyday life, whereas images of severe flooding caused by climate change create different levels of engagement. People can relate as one day they may see themselves in that situation and are therefore more likely to make a change to their lifestyle. Saffron's work helped us to understand how images in the media can play a role in our changing world. The aim of using imagery in the media is to find the most effective imagery to portray climate change as something we must all act upon.
As well as researching the visual representation of climate change in mass media, Saffron O'Neill has also published work on how climate change is portrayed on social media and how people's perceptions are shaped by what they see online. The effect that social media can have is seen in two papers that Saffron O'Neill has published. A 2015 paper which researches how the IPCC was reported in various sources of media shows that there is a pronounced difference between the coverage of the IPCC between social media and mass media. In comparison to mass media, climate change was framed in a wider variety of ways on social media, reflecting the wider range of discourses that are present online. Furthermore, a 2020 paper illustrates the negative aspects that social media can have upon people's perceptions and opinions of climate change. The paper highlights that social media allows misinformation to proliferate due to the fact that social media sites, especially Twitter and Facebook, are designed to be echo chambers, distorting many people's perceptions of climate change, often in a negative manner. In the interview, Saffron highlighted that to keep research relevant with contemporary society, human geography needs to embrace and engage with new platforms such as TikTok in order to improve and increase the relevance of social and cultural research.
O'Neill's research is supported by Anthony Lizowitz. In multiple papers, Lizowitz and research colleagues argue that representations, in this case cable news outlets, shape the American public's perceptions on climate change. They argue that Fox News airs more shows that lean towards climate change skepticism, with a generally dismissive tone of climate change even happening, and of the science behind it. This is the opposite for CNN and MSNBC. Papers show that Fox News viewing is much more widely related to lower acceptance rates of climate change, while CNN and MSNBC are positively associated with climate change acceptance, with the divide between Republican and Democrat opinions respectively. Feldman et al. Also argue that a reinforcing style framework, shown to the right, plays a significant role. A particular group with particular views, let's take Republicans for example, will selectively consume media that aligns with their views, reinforcing those beliefs and consuming similar media again, and the trial begins. So ultimately, all his research leads to the same argument, that information produced through cable news outlets as a representation influence the American public's opinions on climate change and climate change policies, similar to O'Neill's work. But why is this significant and particularly relevant? Exploring this work is significant because it helps to understand the role of this human geography research in a world where the change of climate is one of the most pressing issues. It shows the importance of representations. It helps to perhaps find ways in which populations are encouraged and influenced to mitigate or adapt and push leaders and those in power to do something meaningful. The clear influence of media in representations in shaping perceptions is important to recognise, so that imagery and research can continue to be adapted to ensure it keeps up with the way the climate is changing the world.
One of Saffron O'Neill's collaboration projects is with a charity called Climate Outreach. Climate Outreach was established in 2004 in Oxford to further involve the public with climate change. They endeavour to put people at the centre of their research in order to ensure a long-lasting impact in addressing climate change. This means that the issue is addressed in ways that relate to people's personal identity and values. This ensures a greater understanding through effective communication. Climate Outreach collaborates with partners such as Getty Images, as well as advising governmental policies such as the UN. However, predominantly, Climate Outreach addresses the general public by producing educational sources, including webinars, podcasts and blogs, as well as projects. One of these projects is Climate Visuals, that launched in 2016. This addresses the impact of different images on public understanding and action against climate change. The project showed that images had a profound impact in inciting positive change by creating a social mandate for global social action. The Climate Visuals project concluded that in order to have a distinct impact, images used needed to be accessible and engaging. This can be achieved by following their 7 key principles outlined on the slide. Consequently, Climate Outreach shows the significance of collaborating across a variety of scales, as describing the science and facts behind a problem is not effective enough to induce long-term change. This highlights the significance of human geography beyond academic research within practical engagement with society. Visual imagery at an appropriate scale and addressing its audience can be effective in shaping people's perceptions and therefore actions on global issues.
David Campbell and colleagues have conducted research into the effects of media on people's perceptions of refugees. This research was conducted in Australia and found that people perceive refugees as a threat to security and sovereignty, and this can be seen in how the media present the refugees to the population. Images of large groups on boats shot from a distance is the dominant form of representation for refugees, consisting of 66% of the photos used in the media. These images do not incite compassion on a scale like that of close-up photos where people can be recognisable, which are used in only 2% of media images. This means that the refugee crisis, instead of being posed as a humanitarian issue, is instead seen as a potential threat leading to increased border control. Psychologists have found that close-up portraits incite more compassion from people, and so should be the more dominant form of media usage if the refugee crisis was posed as a humanitarian issue. However, images are not the only factor that account for people's opinions of refugees, but rather they increase the reinforcement of the narrative being given to them by the news or politicians, for example.
Over the course of this presentation, we have explored the role of human geography in our changing world. We explored this through a series of examples revolving around the study of representations. Dr. Saffron O'Neill's work highlighted the importance of understanding the impacts of visual imagery within the field of climate change. It explored the effectiveness of climate change imagery and highlighted how certain images, such as prominent political figures, were not so effective. This highlighted to us how human geography has a role in understanding and interpreting such reactions. We followed by exploring work conducted by Anthony Leibowitz, who explored climate change acceptance across cable news channels. His work highlighted that human geography's role in interpreting our perceptions goes beyond visual imagery and encompasses other forms of representation such as cable news outlets. Next, we explored how geographical work, in particular that conducted by Dr. Saffron O'Neill, has aided charities such as Climate Visuals to provide more effective climate change imagery to companies and the public alike. Finally, we looked at research on the representation of refugees. The research found that the representations of refugees lowered compassion and increased the view that they are a security risk. Exploring this highlighted how human geography's role in understanding representations goes beyond climate change to wider societal issues. Overall, by putting our findings together, we conclude that one role of human geography is to understand how representations shape our actions and thoughts, and to use this understanding to aid effective action against a variety of societal issues.